So a little bit about the hospital exercise coming up on the 21st. Bruce is going to cover a little bit more of this later. So the exercise will start from the ARRL's point of view at 8 o'clock with the net starting at 8 o'clock. Each hospital will check in by voice and also by WinLink if they have it. Right now we have 45 ARRL's members signed up to participate. Thank you very much. And we're able to cover 15 locations. We got a request in for, it must be like 60 locations have asked for ARRL's, but we're not able to cover all locations because we're not going to send people in by themselves or unless they have experience. So we're going to cover 15 locations, and maybe in the future we can expand on that. So the key things are going to be happening during the exercise. We'll be sending voice and WinLink reports to the Medical Operations Center, and they'll be sent by voice to Judy, who will be at the MOC. You'll get permission from the net control, John Kasich, CPO, to communicate to the MOC. John may bump you over to a side repeater to transmit your traffic to the MOC. So the county is going to be, has asked us to make sure that everybody can do the hospital status report, which we've done in the past. You might also hear it referred to as the essential elements report or the train color code report. So we'll send out samples of that, and there'll be a lot of WinLink traffic that we're also going to be sending. Right now we have 15 voice repeaters or 15 repeater networks. We have permission to work those during the exercise. And we've got plenty of WinLink gateways away, so there'll be no traffic jams, no waiting to send traffic. And we'll be sending traffic via the repeaters or simplex if you can do it. And that way the primary repeater is for traffic control. So there should be a quiet time on the primary repeater. So a net control will be doing an top of the hour roll call. And then on the half hour, well, if there's something that the MOC can put out, they will send out an hourly situation report on the half hour to give everybody a situation awareness, what's happening around the county. For information, there's a new temporary MOC location. It's been moved out of Mission Valley. It's now up in the Curry Mesa area, but there's no ARRL's room there yet. So the hams at the MOC will be set up in a parking lot. There'll be a brief HF net on 75 meters. That's not for hospitals. You've got too much going on in hospitals, but people that are ARRL's members that are at home on that Thursday morning are welcome to check into that 75 meter net. And just to review, if you haven't seen the essential elements hospital status report for a while, this is what it looks like. If your hospital is fully functional, you'll just tell the MOC that you're fully functional. And but if there's some things that are degraded, you can go into detail. We'll push this out via email to everybody so they can print out a paper copy, hand it to your incident commander, and ask them to fill it out. And the incident commander will be sending this report in via web EOC, but we're asking that we also communicate this for ARRL's practice in parallel to web EOC via ARRL's ham radio channels. So, and down to the bottom right-hand corner there, it's a very long form. I snipped this off so it all fit in one slide. You'll see the color codes there for those are train categories. I don't remember what train stands for, but it's color codes for if they're doing an evacuation, what are the different categories of life support needed for patients being transferred away from a medical facility. And like blue, there is ambulatory to evacuate, and there's other ones, basic life support, advanced life support. So those are the color-coded train categories. And if you are fully functional, you don't have to read off the entire form to the MOC, just say fully functional. If just one area is degraded, just let them know that 5 Foxtrot radiology is not functioning, but everything else is, to try to keep the traffic as short as possible. And Bruce, that's all I have. Back to you.
I have one question on that form. And the question is that from what I could read in the very fine print, I mean, this would be something that the hospital would be responsible for, isn't it?
Yeah, so they will tell us the status. We will ask them, what's your status? Maybe hand them a paper copy of it, and they'll check off the boxes, hand it back to us, and then we will transmit that information to the MOC.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions for Rob?
Yeah, Peter has his hand up.
Hey, Rob, so when you talked about using alternate repeaters for our traffic during the drill, which makes sense to me, and it seems obvious to me how to do that in terms of hospital-to-hospital communication. You call them on the main net and negotiate an alternate repeater. Have we thought about a protocol for when we're calling the EOC? Do we call on the main net and they'll recommend an alternate repeater to try and connect over? Is that the way we're planning to do that?
Exactly. You'd call net control on the primary and say you have traffic to the MOC and you'd like to do that on a repeater. You know your location, you know what the repeater you can get into, and what repeater would also cover Kearney Mesa, and say you'd recommend QSY over to that repeater to send your traffic, and then net control will say, okay, go ahead, do it, and then you meet the MOC on that alternate channel. That way, if somebody has other traffic they want to send, we're not tying up the primary repeater.
Very good, thank you.
Any additional questions for Rob? All right, I know Rob said that Bruce would be speaking to the hospital drill later, but let's speak to the hospital drill now and make it a contiguous segment. So what was just mentioned is going to be an interesting dynamic. First time we've really tried to do this in earnest, if you will. And it's going to require that the net control is keeping track of not only who has been moved off to alternate frequencies, if you will, but I would also strongly recommend, for following that practice, that when you are done, either you are returning to and notifying or making some notification that you are back on frequency for net control to make that same note. The communications aspect of this particular drill are interesting. It's been a while because of COVID since we've done one of these events, and since the county and the state have done one of these events. The local group here that's doing this, as you might imagine, just like us, might be a little out of practice, although we do other things to go out and stay, in the fold, if you will, and, to continue to utilize and develop our skills. A lot of folks from the hospital and the clinical side are going to be doing this for the very first time. New faces, new people that haven't done this before, things like that. So I would expect you to run into perhaps lots of questions. You are most certainly, if you're a volunteer, going to be watched very carefully to see how you do these things. Part of the reason why is because we're encouraging the hospitals and the clinics once again, and we have a new effort and a new drive, especially on the ambulatory side. And for some of the other healthcare facilities that are more non-traditional, at least to us. So things that are not clinics, things that are not hospitals, but ambulatory surgery centers, diabetes treatment centers, long-term nursing and skilled nursing facilities, things like that. They're all going to be involved in the future. So part of the criticality in this drill, especially since we're coming out of a long-term non-actionable drill window, right? First time we're doing this in a while since COVID. A lot of the folks that are invested in these smaller facilities are interested in getting amateur radio licenses, getting their staff trained, making an investment in amateur radio equipment. So we're mapping it back to a practice that we started with the hospital many years ago, in that we're encouraging them to have staff on premise where they can get engaged if there's really an event of some type requiring disaster communications, and get them started while we are in the background waiting for, or having been prompted by them to get areas engaged and get areas going to their location. So they are going to be learning from us, seeing what it is that we're doing, kind of getting a background of what they might need to be doing in that first hour or two of a real event themselves. And super critical and super important that we're on our best behavior, if you will, and that we're doing things as we should, very professionally. We should be dressing as volunteers. So, you know, the usual dress code things fall into mind. You know, you are effectively extended staff of the clinic, hospital, or the facility that's requesting your presence. So dress code, you know, business casual is typically what we recommend. So flip-flops, beachwear, all the usual funny things that you go out and say in the background, those are going to be no-nos. If you're going to be outside and you don't already have shade set up, things that are important to you personally will be important to us as well. Making sure you've got sunscreen, plenty of liquids, things like that, because you're going to be potentially outdoors under a canopy in some cases. The other aspect of this is from the drill perspective, and just for awareness, there is again, renewed vigor in seeing how areas will and can perform for the county and for these facilities going forward. The discussion in the drill planning events has been that somewhere about halfway through the drill, there will effectively be some communication disruption that'll be very significant. So all communications that the hospitals will be doing back to the MOC, and as well, hospital communications they might be doing within their own facilities group, either hospital to hospital or hospital back to their own command centers, is intended to be facilitated by ARRL. Not by satellite phone, not by business radio, not by the internet, not by other conveyances, but 100% through ARRL. So it could get very busy for ARRL traffic, or you might see a surge for ARRL traffic roughly halfway through the event. And I saw Rob's note flash by. Judy's going to be busy at the MOC. Judy is going to need at least another volunteer or assistant, hopefully as capable as we know that she is. I would expect it to
Or
be that
actually
busy.
more capable would be better.
Well, you know, with you, Judy, we always expect that while you're doing all the tasks that you do, it's also kind of like you've got the rings dangling on your toe that you're swinging, and you've got the hoop on the arm that you're swinging over your head, and you're still writing complete, you know, notes on your forms, and everything's being filled out correctly. So we know you can do all of those things. We'll just make sure you get somebody else that can do the same, and we'll be fine. So expect a surge halfway through, expect a lot of traffic at the end, expect some, if not a lot of site-to-site related communications that won't be directed through the MOC toward the end. But again, this is also just like we do our public events. This is a public event for ARRL. They are going to be watching, observing, learning from, getting an initial background of how they may need to do these things in the future on their own. So super important that we do this with our best foot forward, as we always do. And just a heads up. So also, again, warm months, it's not the end of the year like we normally do these things. It's not May when we do the first one. It's not November, October, September when we do the second. We're likely to have some warm weather out there. So again, for folks that are working outside a facility, please be aware of yourself, of your needs, and make sure you're adequately protected. The only other interesting dynamic in this that, you know, is brand new for us as a group, and it will be a dynamic, as you might imagine, going forward, is COVID. So as we were given to understand it during the initial planning meetings, the requirement was going to be expectations to be fully masked, as well as showing a current vaccination card. And to be honest, we're trying to get clarification and definition on exactly what a fully filled out vaccination card should mean universally, so there's no misunderstanding. And it sounds, at least at this point, as in, if you have a 2-dose vaccine, you need to have both of those on your card, plus one. They're expecting one booster. And again, the expectation will be just like any other guidelines after you've had your booster. For that booster to become fully effective, it's X number of days after that booster was given for you to have the full benefit. So we are, as we're getting closer to the actual date of the event, we are waiting to hear back from some of the folks doing the event with their facilities to get that exact definition. And we have already heard in some cases where there is no requirement for masking, as an example, and you may not even need a vaccine card if you are working outdoors. But again, we're trying to get all of these things clarified at the earliest, so we can get that information out to the group, make sure that there's not any surprises, and make sure all of the volunteers that are signed up currently to go out and perform their duties at a certain location are going to be able to, execute properly. And there, again, won't be any glitches, no surprises. Any questions?
I have one.
Sir?
My first COVID was through my medical provider. The second one, I took that card into what was effectively a drugstore, and the clerk that wasn't stocking the shelves initialed and dated the bottom of my card. Is that going to be a legitimate second COVID vaccine?
So are you saying that you have two cards?
No, the first card was from my medical provider, a hospital group. And then after that, the state said that that they can't give the shots anymore. So they sent me off to like a drugstore. And in the drugstore, the way they officially certified me for my second shot was to just take that card from my hospital and initial the bottom of it and date it. And anybody could have done that to that card. Would that be acceptable to a hospital as an official second shot?
The drugstore should have a record, and they keep a record for each person of things you got there. So is it like CVS or something, or what kind of drugstore?
I don't even remember, but it was either Costco or a drugstore. It's going back a ways now.
They would have a record.
Well, it gives you
If I
some
may
time to,
interject, the card that I have, my vaccination card, the first 3 entries were handwritten, so I suspect that's par for the course.
I haven't seen one that's not handwritten, to be honest. What I'm concerned about is that you've got a card that shows separate dates, appropriate intervals, and that it was filled out with the batch, the lot number, and things like that correctly. That's what I would expect they're going to look for. And if you don't have something showing your first 2 plus a booster, if you're working indoors, as we understand it, then that gives you some time to either get that backfilled and cleared up, or maybe get a second card. As an example, I know people that have different cards. They went to get their second dose. They forgot to go out and take the original card with them. They are in a system somewhere, theoretically, that got them qualified for the second dose. So they have 2 separate cards. They've got one card from one location and one outlet, if you will. They've got a different card from a different drugstore, different location, and they're carrying 2 cards with, the right date sequences on them for what they did, and hopefully the same vaccine, which is what they were doing at that time. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see some paperwork related challenges in there, which is why we're bringing it up early. And again, when we get closer to the event, we'll go out and give you the exact requirements. Peter.
Yeah, so I've been through all of those challenges. I lost my card. And of course have gotten multiple boosters and multiple providers. But the state of California somehow keeps track of all of that. And so I put in the chat, there's a link When I've used it, I saw a note that says not everybody keeps up with it, but it has all 4 of my shots in it from multiple providers. So I just go to that link, put in date of birth, social security number, something, and they send me back something that I can put on my phone. So if you have, for example, if you have an iPhone, it'll drop right into your wallet, but I think it'll give you other things that you can reprint. It'll give you a single document from the state of California that shows all of your records.
Very good. Any additional questions?
Comment. I have noticed that the ARRL website store has some vests and hats, and also large decals for vehicles. Would seem useful to have those in addition to the local Aries shirt, and might be good if we were a little more uniform.
Well, candidly, the reason why we normally don't go down that route, other than our locally generated shirts, if you will, and apparel, the hospitals, when we're working for them and in their service, the incident command centers, in most cases, the MOC, as an example, will have their own vests they want you to wear. They will have their own attire they want you to use. Again, you're in their team. And although you're doing this on behalf of ARRL and the local amateur radio community, you are effectively a volunteer for the hospital. So whatever their requirements are, generally follow. When we do other outdoor events and things like that, if you'd like to go out and do other general areas, attire and things like that, you're certainly welcome to go out and source those particular things if you'd like to go out and do that. A lot of folks have made the investments in having, several of the local area shirts, if you will. Some of them keep them in their vehicle at all times, just in case they need to go out and do the Superman or Superwoman quick change, because they're somewhere away from home and it's got the shirt with them. But generally speaking, in the hospital arena, the vests and things like that follow their coordination and what they do as a practice for their incident command.
Rob, Jim Brower. Hello, Bruce.
Good morning, Jim.
Good morning, Bruce. Quick question. Has anybody done any research at all to figure out which hospitals that were of the group that we're going to do can reach which repeaters, to be able to verify that we have access to where the MOC is, let alone those hospitals being able to reach other hospitals within the group that we're going to be covering, as to what repeaters to actually go to. I think it was stated earlier that the operators would know what they can use. Usually operators know what they can do from home or from work, but as far as going to a new location, do we have any kind of a grid or anything that says what hospitals can reach what repeaters, to try and help Judith a little bit with this MOC effort?
You bring up an excellent point, and as always, excellent thoughts. The normal practice that we try to encourage folks to go out and do, if you already know what your hospital assignment is, generally speaking, we do encourage folks to go out and pre-run the site. If that means that you're going out there with a handheld, you're going out there with a handheld. You're going out there with your radio installed in your vehicle, perhaps, that has more than 4 or 5 watts of power and maybe a little better antenna. And you're just getting a general idea of how well you can hit the local repeaters or the repeaters that may be more central to that particular site. You're also spot on, though. I would strongly recommend that the same thing be done at the MOC. 15 sounds like a lot, and I think what I heard Rob suggest was that a lot of folks will be getting that repeater list at the very last second so they can try their skills at programming their radios manually at the actual morning of the event. So Rob is probably not going to hand out that repeater list until about 7 o'clock on the morning of the drill. So it'll be up to Rob to make sure everybody is programmed and ready to go. And how does that sound? I
sounds
saw
pretty-
you. I saw you
The
slap
repeater
your head.
list.
I
the
saw you
repeater
slap your
list-
hand against your head, Jim. That was
Yeah.
good.
Bruce?
The
this is Jim
repeater
again.
list, yeah, can I just interject here? The repeater list was first sent out 2 weeks ago, and we set an update yesterday. And so drill participants already have copies of the repeater list.
Bruce, this is Jim again. The other issue that I see, having been at the MOC in the past, is that as frequencies as one hospital's trying to reach another, so it's not just for the MOC to be able to figure out which hospitals they can reach or which ones they might not be able to, but also for the individual hospitals to not only reach the MOC, but the other hospitals that during the drill, they might have to pass information to. So it's kind of a large cobweb, more so than just one-on-one.
Well, by no means was I understating the importance and the role specifically of net control, but also as well, and I see you shaking your head, the importance of the operators following the decorum and practice, right, of checking in and checking out with net control. You know, this is the kind of scenario where in the past, I've done this on larger scale events than this, to be sure, but this is where you've got literally the wide erase board all set up with grids and who's doing what. You've got the color coded magnets going on a mag board, and you're tracking who's doing what, just like you're tracking equipment and where things are at asset wise. In this case, we're tracking where the radio operators are from a channel and communication perspective. And again, because it's so many, it may be better just to go out and fall in line with we're going to very diligently check in and check out. And if that means that we're waiting for other traffic to clear, we're waiting for the traffic to clear. But as Rob mentioned, we're trying to keep the main repeater frequencies for net control clear. So it does become very quick, very short, very concise traffic there. Not we're doing recitations of forums over the year on that particular frequency.
Thank you.
It'll be fun. It's always fun.
Always is.
I had a comment. So I plan to contact either Jay or Rob or Dave or somebody, because I'm programming them all by hand. Plus I have some doubts about my portable antenna. So at least for MOC, by that time I will have verified that sitting over there on that parking lot, I can reach what repeaters I can reach and which ones I can't.
Sure. Good deal.
And this is Rob. I challenge anyone to find a spot in the county that's not covered by at least some of those 15 repeaters.
Yeah, the real trick is knowing which ones are covered by which ones, what spots are covered by which machines. So that's the part. If you can do that in advance by running off your site, that might be a good idea.
Comment.
Go ahead, sir.
I had an opportunity to talk to the representative at Shop Grossmont. And the earliest that we'll be able to go in and test the antennas that they have over there will be on the 14th, I believe. And we will be running some tests with the radios and see what we can hit, what we can't do. And one of the other things, just in case, since it's been a while since those antennas may have been used, is to run an analyze on it to make certain that it doesn't create any problems SWR wise, so it would affect the efficiency of our communication. It's unfortunate that one of our team members may not be participating in it, but nonetheless, I would hope that there'd be some means in which we can conduct some training so he can, catch up to the goings on in terms of the type of traffic that we pass. You have to excuse. I have Interstate Greenfield going here, so I'll try to shut the mic down. hope would get a chance to work with the team members after that walkthrough, so we can run some tests outside, so we can get some hands-on training as well. So I would hope that we get a chance to talk separately and see if there's something we can work out regarding that. But I look forward to finding out just what the capabilities are regarding the hospital and the repeaters around the county to see the efficacy of what will work and what won't. And I'm sure that will be in preparation for the future drill. And I believe typically we would have 2 drills, but I'm not sure if this is just one for the year. So if you can elaborate on that, I would truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Rob, you want to take a stab at that one first?
Sure. So if anyone is not able to participate in a specific location, we will transfer them over to a different spot where the restrictions are less tight, and so they can participate fully in the drill and experience 213s and net traffic and chatter and all that.
And I guess we'll keep an eye on that and map that as we go forward, correct?
Are you talking about vaccination status or repeaters?
The repeaters, sorry.
Yeah, that'll be sort of tribal knowledge for each location of which ones they can participate in or connect with. And then after action reports from each location, if they could tell us which repeaters worked, we'll know which repeaters are more valuable for each location. So yeah, we look forward to the after action reports.
Very good.
One more comment, Bruce. It occurs to me that you mentioned the mask requirements inside, and if for a particular hospital they require that we use their cables and their antennas, for example, and we have to be working from indoors with masks on, that's going to create a challenge with clear communication. So it's going to require some patience between parties if we have to be muffled on an N95 mask, for example. Certainly it'd be better if we could be outside.
And the dynamics of being outside are sometimes actually equally complicating, if you will, in that now we've got runners and we've got delays of what's happening, and there's more of a, if we're working indoors, there's more of an immediacy. You're working with a group, you can call people over, you can sort things out, you can figure out what needs to be done, if there's any question about what needs to be sent or some other communication related, quandary happens. When you're doing it outdoors and you've got runners that are going back and forth, it becomes much more like a telephone game. And even though you've got forms that you're filling out, you've got static data that you are sending, it's a little more challenging from the perspective that you have more latency in the communication to try to get clarity on anything that might come up. So it's a mixed bag. To be honest, I thought about the whole mask thing as well. And all I'm going to say is, you know what, folks, we've had over 2 years now to get used to hearing and talking to people through masks. It's going to be just as easy or just as hard as it's always been. It'll be as good as we can make it. So keep your chins up, smile through your mask, even though people can't tell that your mouth is doing that. They can usually tell when your eyes are. So just kind of be aware of, the fact that it's going to be equally challenging for all folks. We'll get through it like we always do. Anything else? And we'll roll in the field day related stuff.
The mask comment. If you're going to go to a medical facility, they may actually require a real medical N95 mask be used and not a handkerchief pulled across your face like most people seem to wear out on the street.
Well, let's be super clear about that. The cloth diaper, which is the most derogatory comment that I usually hear when talking about things that are not real masks. Anything that's fabric is certainly not going to be acceptable. I would expect, to be honest, because this seems to be the norm in these environments, I would expect that if they have a specific mask request, they're going to give you a mask as you are walking in, or they will ask you to change what you have. But I would absolutely not walk into any facility with anything that is not a regular filter type mask. And that means even the folks that have these cloth things that go across their faces, that have some little 2-inch wide insert in them that's supposed to filter out everything from their nose and their mouth. You know, if I was a smart man, I would have invested very heavily in the mask business about, 2 years ago, and I would be a millionaire many times over now with all these creative decorative designs that don't really seem to do anything. So for real, I would make sure that you've got a genuine, regular, conventional style surgical medical mask. And I would also fully expect that you do not get offended if somebody looks at you funny, maybe smiles at you behind their mask where you can't necessarily see that they're smiling, but you're looking at their eyes and you can tell that they are, and they reach into a box somewhere at a hospital and give you one of theirs to swap out. The high likelihood of that. So don't be offended, don't be surprised. They just may want you to be using something that they are issuing to everybody. Does that make sense?
And this will be my first time doing one of these drills. So I wonder if we're doing the relay game inside to outside, is it likely that we may be able to communicate inside to outside and vice versa via HTs?
I suppose if there are forms involved that the facility needs to, fill out and send back and forth for casual communications, maybe. But if there's a clarity required, as Bruce said, you look at the form and go, I can't, I need to do something to this. I can't really send this the way it is. Go get it clarified. You have to, that'll.
The ham teams at some locations do use HTs to communicate, but that's set up by each location, the hams at that location.
Okay, thank you.
For what it's worth, one more comment about masking. At some point, we went to UCSD for a procedure and wore our, as you say, cloth diapers. These are ones that Christy designed to cover the beard. So, they still much better than the commercial product would for me. And basically, they handed a surgical mask, said, fine. When the surgical mask, put my mask back on over it. And they were happy with that. As long as their needs were met, if you have a particular bent about your particular mask, you may be able to double mask to satisfy their requirements as well as your uneasiness, shall we say.
All true.